This is the third part in a series of videos looking at the removal of an engine from a BMW 116i 2006 model, so E87 N45 engine. I'll put the links into the previous two videos for convenience. So I've managed to have a bit of a tidy up under the car, but I still got yet another spill of coolant when I raise the car a bit further. So one of the things I do, and I'd encourage you to do something similar, is I don't rely on one set of axle stands. If one of these got, I don't know, kicked out, seems unlikely, but if something happened and one of the axle stands went, so I've got them under the jacking points, as you can see, but I've also got them under the front suspension, and it's the same at the back. I've got similar sort of double cover, as it were. One thing, the reason I actually wanted to come under here was, if you saw an earlier video, you'll remember that I was suffering from a bit of an oil leak around the gearbox. So I cleaned it all up. I did remove a couple of metal brackets from the side and redo the bolts on the side to the correct torque. And I don't know if any of that's had an effect, but I do not have any more oil leaks by the looks of things. This is all completely dry, so there's no sign of an oil leak now. I don't know what happened, but anyway, that's all good. So next job, I could disconnect the manifold up there at this flexible joint here, but I didn't do that when I put it in, so I don't really want to get involved in that flexible joint, so I think I'm going to disconnect it from here, because I believe this is the way I put it in. So the other thing I can do, you can just about see the lambda sensor, oxygen sensor up there. I've got to get that out. That'll be fun, I'm sure, because there's not much space, as you can see, and I'll need to remove the wiring. So this is the connector for that. The oxygen sensor, as you can see, it says pre-cat. So of course, the catalytic converter on this car is right at the back, after the tail box. It's a sort of funny tail piece, but on an original car, you would have the cat in this area here, probably going in this space here, I think. Does it? I can't even remember now. It's so long ago. But you'll have a pre and post cat. You can see this. In theory, this could have had a post catalytic converter oxygen sensor put in it, but it hasn't. You don't, in a 116 trophy car, you actually don't run the second oxygen sensor. You can see there's the redundant plug for it, and of course you can't really run it because, as I said, the catalytic converter is actually in the tailpipe effectively, so you'd have to have something poking out the back of the car. Okay, so it's just coming up to lunchtime for me. I've spent ages cleaning this floor. One thing I have realised is, for the racers amongst you, you'll know that if you drop coolant on a track, it does get quite slippery. I hadn't appreciated just how slippery coolant gets. It's awful. As opposed to water, some people just run plain water. I don't. I run coolant because I'm a bit, I suppose I could use deionised water, but for the health of the engine and what have you, I should really run coolant, so that's what I do. It's very slippery underfoot, so if you do spill it, just be very careful and maybe use some sort of cleaning agent to get it off your floor. I thought I'd just give you another update. So despite what I said, I haven't even got to the exhaust manifold yet, but I decided to prepare everything under here for, for getting the gearbox out. So as you can see, I removed this is the bracket that holds the cat lambda sensor plugs. It's a big bracket just for a couple of plugs. In fact, that might be an opportunity to lose a bit of weight there, so I might think about that. And then I removed the clutch slave cylinder, you can see there, out of the side of the bell housing. There was a plate on the front of here, I'm sure you know, that comes off when you take off the this bracket, and then there's one more bolt up the top there. You do those 3 bolts, that one, and that one, and then that plate comes off the front of the bell housing. The reversing switch, so that's here, just the normal sort with the, you know, the wire clip thing that you pull out and then you pull the pull the plug off. So that's done. And then I moved on to the getting the prop shaft off of the back of the gearbox. Now you can get all the bolts undone, and you can almost get the prop shaft off, because the prop shaft has got a couple of spline joints on it, and so it will move. The spline joints are just there where the center piece is, and you can move it back, but unfortunately you can't move it back far enough. So then that means I had to drop the this center bearing, and that allows you to take up the, well, you get greater distance, don't you, because it drops and the angle and whatnot. But also I think there might be another spline joint at the back. I don't remember actually, but I think there might be one at the back where it goes into the diff. And so I was able to take, make use of that, and that allowed me to get the prop shaft off the back. And you can see that I've basically wire tied it, or cable tied it up to the just under the gear shifter. The gear shifter linkage, you've got a couple of things to do. There's a sort of rod thing that goes onto this, which is the actual selector, and that's got a funny little U-shaped clip on it, so you just pull that off and that comes off reasonably easy. Then you get onto this one. That is that took me quite some time to do. So I'll show you what it looks like if I can just find it here. So this is the clip, and it goes, the orientation is that way round. So the pin goes through the casting and through the that stabilizer bar that you see just there that I'm rattling around. So it goes through, but then you rotate it down, and this little tang here goes into a relief in the side of the casting in the gearbox, and boy, is that a real challenge to get that to come out. Well, it was for me anyway. In the end, I did manage to jam a small screwdriver down the side of it and get it out far enough, and then use another screwdriver to flip it over. So if I can just explain it better, if I put it back sort of in position. So it's like that, okay? And there, but it's down here, and it's straddling this bit of aluminium here. And so you've got to flip it up. And what I had to do is get a screwdriver down the back of it, between the casting and where the tang is, to sort of prise it open. Now, I've had the gearbox out a couple of times. First time I took it out, this thing was in there, but this whole side was broken off. It was missing, and I can see why, because somebody had a right go at it, obviously, to get the thing off. Okay, so that took some time. I was going to leave the exhaust sort of, I know I had to disconnect the exhaust from the downpipe, but I was going to leave it hanging. But in the end, I was concerned I was putting unnecessary strain on the rest of the system. And as it's only one U-bolt, I undid the U-bolt and took the this pipe off. I'm sorry, I can't remember what the setup is on a standard car. I know my exhaust is quite different from a standard car, but I think you still have that piece of pipe, don't you, that goes from the downpipe, probably from the bottom of the catalytic converter actually, and all the way back to here. I am running the centre box, as I keep telling everybody. I am running this centre box, which lots of people in my race class, they don't run it. What else? I think actually I'm pretty much ready now to drop the gearbox out. So it would be a matter of undoing these two this side, these two this side. Obviously, I've got to support the gearbox with something, with my trolley jack. And then getting all the bell housing bolts off. Actually, I'd probably get the bell housing bolts out first because there are dowels to hold it in place. So I'd probably get the bell housing bolts out first and then undo this cross member and drop it out. The one thing I haven't quite decided on, I have one of those beam things that goes across the engine bay to hold the weight of the engine, because apparently with these engines, when you take the gearbox off, they sort of flip forward. So some people just put blocks of wood between the subframe and the sump, because I don't think there's a great deal, it's pretty evenly balanced, but it's just not balanced enough to just sit there. So they put blocks of wood between it and rest it on that. Or the other thing to do is to use the engine support. The problem we use in the engine support is that I'm going to end up using the same eye on the top of the engine that I would use to lift the engine out. So I'm going to have a think about that. I'm not going to go much further with this today anyway. The only thing I do want to do is get the exhaust manifold off. But we've got people coming around this evening, so I can't go keep working on it much longer. So yeah, so I'll get the exhaust manifold off, and I'll probably close out this video with a shot of it once the manifold's gone. Well, that was much simpler than I expected, I have to say. I think I did it in about 3 minutes. No, maybe slightly longer to get all the nuts out, but yeah, maybe 5 or 10 minutes to get that out. The only thing I would say, and it's something I haven't really covered elsewhere in this video, I've deleted my AC, and obviously you're probably going to be working with a car with AC, which means you need to consider the pump and the pipework and all that, which I haven't covered at all. So for that, I'd refer to the Haynes manual if I was you, or the equivalent. I keep saying Haynes manual. I know other people around the world watch these videos, and I know there's Bentley manuals, aren't there? I think they're American. And obviously there's also BMW TIS, which you can subscribe to on a daily basis. I don't know if you knew that, but you can. I can't remember how much it is. It's very comprehensive, as you'd expect, but to have it for a long period of time, it would be quite expensive. But what you can do is access the pages and then, say, print them to PDF. I'm not breaking any copyright rules here, but just for reference, so you don't have to have them available online while you're doing it. Okay, so yeah, it came out. The only problem I did have, and I've had this before, is rather than the nut coming undone, one of the studs came out, but that's not the end of the world. I did want to show you one thing though on the manifold itself. So one of the things you notice is, as opposed to what I said earlier in the video, that I would take the oxygen sensor out. Of course, I didn't really need to. All I needed to do was unclip the wiring. So that was quite useful, because it's really difficult to get the lambda sensor socket thing in there when it's in situ. But the thing I did notice, and I first noticed this when I looked at the gasket, is this and this. It looks to me as though it's been blowing, and if you look there and you look there. So what I will do, I think, is I'll clean it up and then put a straight edge across it, but I might have to have this very lightly skimmed to get it flat, because I don't want problems with the gasket blowing. So yeah, that was an unexpected finding. Anyway, I think we're done for today, and done for this video. I believe now I'm in a position to actually drop the gearbox, get that out, and then take the engine out. I don't think there's anything else to remove from around the engine. It's all done now. So we'll pick up with me taking the gearbox out. We're now on to day 3 of this exercise to remove the engine. I've just been reading the Haynes manual about what the correct procedure is. Now, what they say is that the way you take the engine out is to we've got to take the gearbox off. So I haven't done that yet. So the gearbox has got to come off. Then to lift it, what they advise you, the first thing they advise you is get it down on the ground unless you've got a lift that you're confident can lift high enough to get the engine over the front of the car, which with it up in the air, I don't think mine will. So I'm going to have to put it on the ground, but that's okay. The hoist will attach on the front bracket, and then on this eye, I hope you can see that right at the back. Can you see that in this video? Nope, you can't, because the oil filter housing's in the way. Let me move this. Now perhaps you can see the eye is just there. I believe that's the one. It says an eye at the rear of the block on the left-hand side, and that's the only thing I can see. And obviously that's a very sturdy bit of metal there. So that would definitely take the weight. So we've got that one at the back and this one at the front. Once we've got it supported, you then undo the engine mounts, the nut each side, but you have to completely remove the engine mount on the right-hand side of the engine. So left-hand side as we're looking at it now. That's because there's not enough space to bring it up through the, I don't think there's enough space to bring it up through the engine bay. And also, yeah, it would, if you tried to drag it forward, it would hit on the steering column. So you can't do that. So that's got to come off. That didn't take long at all. So I followed the exact procedure they said in the Haynes manual. Not that there's any particular secret about it, but I put a trolley jack under the centre of the gearbox. I undid the cross member bolts, and then they say that because they say you can drop the gearbox slightly to get access to the bell housing bolts, but I find I don't have to. And one of the things I do, and I have seen other people do this on videos actually, is I put together a load of my extension pieces like that. Like that. Yeah, you can see that. And what that means is you can get you can drive the socket head. It's a Torx head actually. You can drive the Torx socket from right behind the cross member on the back of the gearbox, because if you look, you see it projects the sort of turning point right back to behind the cross member, and I've found that works really well. What it does mean is you can use, if they're tight, you can use a brake bar, and you can certainly get a small brake bar onto it like that one. And I can even get like a really, oh sorry, you can't see the end of that, can you? Like that. And I can really get a really long brake bar on some of them that are higher up. So that seems to work particularly well. And then what I use is I've got an impact wrench that I use to spin the bolts out. You don't have to, of course, you could just use a ratchet wrench, but that's to save time. The only problem is with the impact wrench is I was too close to it on one of the bolts I did, and it twisted and smacked me in the mouth, and I've got a bloody lip now. So just an injury, just a workshop injury. Wasn't quite the one I was expecting. Okay, so then pulling it off, actually wiggling it around and pulling it off, that was a little bit of a pain, and it is quite sketchy because you've got it sort of balanced on the top of a trolley jack, and then suddenly it comes back, and you know, you just need to be careful. If you can do it with another person, it would be far better, I have to say. If two of you could support the gearbox. I've now got away with this about 3 times because I've changed the gearbox once. Why did I? Oh, yeah. Obviously, I had the gearbox out when I did the flywheel. Yeah, so I've had the gearbox out twice before. So this is my 3rd time of taking this gearbox out. The other thing I was going to tell you was you'll notice the front wheel is off the car. And the reason is because I bring the gearbox out through this gap here. You sort of slide it forward and then round under this area here, so you get plenty of clearance. At the height I have the car right now, I couldn't get the gearbox out through the side. It wouldn't come. It's too tall. So I've used this technique several times now. So yeah, out through the wheel well is the way to do it, and you obviously got to take a wheel off. Right. So that's all done. I don't think there's any other particular secret to tell you about on this. It all seemed fine. My next job, I didn't start out here till a little bit late. I was out here at about 1:30 in the afternoon, and it's now 3:30. I had a 10-minute break for a cup of coffee, and I'm just going to do a bit more now. The main thing I've got to do is get the car down on its wheels. Let me show you what I did at the front of the engine block. So I hope you can see there that there's a couple of pieces of wood under the sump, and so the engine is tilted forward and resting on those pieces of wood. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave everything as it is, put the wheel back on it, and then I'm going to lower the car down, ready to lift the engine out, and that will be, yeah, hopefully that will be job done. The other benefit of having it on its wheels is if I need to move the car backwards a bit, which I might do to give me a bit more space at the front of the car, I can do that, obviously, because it will be down on its 4 wheels. One other thing I'll mention is, you remember I was looking for an oil leak in my gearbox because I had oil dripping off the bottom of the gearbox, and it was definitely transmission oil because I've got Fuchs engine oil in and it's purple, and the stuff dripping was golden colour. So it was definitely transmission fluid, transmission oil. But I can't see any source of it. I thought it might be coming out from around this vent thing, but there's no oil there. It's definitely not been coming down there. So I'm at a total loss as to what caused it, and even more, why has it now gone away? One possibility I thought of is I may have overfilled the gearbox, and I have drained some oil out of it, and maybe that was it. And maybe it was coming out through this vent, because I did sort of try and clean up around the side of the gearbox when I did have the oil appearing. But there's certainly nothing coming out of it now, so I think it's all good. We'll end this part here, and in the next episode I'll cover getting the engine out and getting it onto a stand.